So, welcome to the next episode of Interviewing the Experts. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Angela Schroeder, and we're going to be talking all things wellness. So, before we get into that, for those who don't know, my name's Joel Kirkland. I'm Managing Director of Focus on Workday. I lead a team of dedicated Workday recruiters. So, Angela, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for inviting me back again. Yes, I'm Angela. I've been part of the Workday ecosystem for about 2 decades now, with roles across consulting, teaching, and project management, and now customer success. More recently, I've been focusing on aligning wellness with high performance, and that's both inside and outside of work. I'm also a yoga and meditation teacher. I've been a practitioner, Ayurveda, and reflexology for 20 years. And I serve as a trustee for a charity called Limb Power, which helps and supports people with limb difference. So my journey into wellness came from seeing firsthand how the pressure of like tech roles and the roles that I've been in for a couple of decades, how that's impacted on not just performance, but also how it affects the body physically. And so the person behind the role itself is what's important to me, not actually the role itself. And so that became really my purpose from place to place where I've worked over the years, more predominantly probably in the early 2000s, a law firm that I was working at. And that's when I really got passionate about this. And then it's been quite the journey since then. That brings me to today with you.
Amazing. All right, so I'm just going to set the scene because it's not our first rodeo. So it's the second time that we've discussed this topic, and it feels to me like it's super pertinent right now. We're in a really interesting time over the last sort of 5, 6 years. The only constant has been change. I feel like we've been a little bit through the washing machine. At the moment, it seems like there's all sorts going on, both in the wider world and also in our day jobs. So yeah, really relevant stuff. So let's kick off by talking about what do you think makes Workday professionals or anyone who's in an ERP ecosystem susceptible to stress or burnout, Angie?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely answer that question being in that environment. I think ERP professionals, especially those working in the high pressure ecosystems like Workday, they often carry a lot of weight of responsibility. So we're balancing go lives, stakeholder expectations, we're shifting timelines, we're supporting change in an organization. And the stress peaks at predictable times and not predictable times. So moments during implementations where with system issues, or perhaps after big organizational changes and restructures or layoffs. And it's often missed in that sort of chronic low level stress build up where we're always on. So that mindset is always on. So we've got back-to-back meetings and we feel like we need to kind of be on it and the expert 24/7. And that leads to depletion over time.
So what are the signs of stress or burnout?
I think sometimes when you're a professional and you're used to high levels of stress all of the time, it gets harder to notice that burnout. And what I would say, it's the subtle signs are harder to spot and others are more obvious. So things like fatigue that doesn't lift, things like brain fog, emotional reactivity, feeling overwhelmed, cynicism can kick in, or even physical symptoms like tension, headaches, aches and pains in the body, back pain, hip pain, and a lot of digestive issues, things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Those things are often the hidden, more subtle things that are going on when your body is undergoing stress, neck pain, of course, the obvious ones. And when people start withdrawing or missing deadlines, losing motivation, as a leader, as a manager, you'll think, okay, what's happened to this person? They're always a high performer. It's not laziness. It's a signal. It's a signal there's something else going on, right? And on teams, when the collaboration sometimes starts to dip, or there's a rising conflict or disagreements that you're like, oh God, what's going on? That's often the result of unseen mental strain.
Understood. So why is wellness so important to high performance or to facilitate high performance?
Well, because we have to be well on the inside, right? It's an inside job. And so I think wellness isn't about just being relaxed all of the time. It's about having the capacity to meet challenges without being overwhelmed. So when we're mentally and emotionally well, we're more present, we're more resilient and capable of having those difficult conversations, innovating and leading with clarity. And I often say, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You know, everybody knows that one. And in our work, when the pressure hits it's the people that have done the work, that have the resilience, they've done the work in advance, they've kind of learnt a way to cope and to be a high performer. And that will still bring their best. Then they can bring their best when they've learnt those techniques. Certainly the experiences that I've had over time of not having done the work and then being totally overwhelmed and going through this process is why I'm sitting here today, right? So back in the 1990s, I'm showing my age now, when this was my journey to begin with, you know, I was traveling 6 hours a day. I was living in Shortlands and working in Reading. I was at PeopleSoft at the time, and certainly that travel aspect kicked in. So it's important that wellness and high performance are linked together for employers. It's not a soft and fluffy. It is actually a necessary requirement for us all to have that to hand, and for it not to be just a checkbox exercise.
Got it. So what can companies do to provide wellness support or wellness programs?
Well, yeah, along the lines of what I've just really started to say. So it starts with shifting the mindset, Joel. You know, we've been talking about this on and off over the years, various different stages. So when we have to shift our own mindsets into being a different way because we've been under stress and we've found that we find techniques of our own. And so why it's important for employers and those like Workday is that it is a high pressure job, right? Whatever the role that it is that you're doing, there's always going to be a time pressure. And so starts with the mindset shifting. And then, as I said before, the wellness, it isn't a checkbox, tick box or fluffy perk. It's actually a strategic decision to make as an employer. And I stress that word strategic, or being a CSM, you know, that's the word that's top of mind for us all of the time. But it really is that strategic decision to be compassionate and take care of your teams. It's about creating that environment where everyone and high performance can coexist in a place where well-being is also valued. And that means embedding wellness into the culture. And it's not just seen as offering classes or apps or yoga classes or breathing classes or apps. It is about leadership buy-in. So really encouraging our stakeholders to get on board and be our advocates. And that's certainly where we've begun at Workday and where the journey is leading us into. And the effects of having tried some of these things and talks and wellness talks give people ideas. And so their mind shifts then start to switch into a new way of thinking. And then making practices accessible and inclusive. And most importantly, it's not mandatory, you know, it's an invitation. So everybody does their own thing, right? What works for me might not work for you. And whatever you find might not work forever either. You've also got to keep changing it up and be aware of your body and feel into your body. So a lot of the practices that we do are what we call embodiment practices. So we've got experts that come in, as you know, you've met one of them already. And the wellness aspect of this is kind of having a tenfold effect. So the more that we're kind of offering, the more folks come along, and we've started to almost be the influencers of others getting to know what works for them.
Okay, sounds awesome. It's good. So that's on a company level. What about on an individual level? So how can people, or what can people do to protect themselves from stress or burnout?
Wow, there's so many things to do. And I think what is key is that you do something every day, right? So it's that accumulative effect of picking something and sticking with it and having a plan. I'm rolling my eyes here because my partner says to me, gosh, you know, sometimes you don't stick to your plan. Sticking to the plan is the hardest thing. And sometimes maybe just having something really simple, if the plan isn't working, pick one thing. If you have a plan, there's too much on the plan, bring it back. So I would start with breath work. Some people call it meditation. If you're a practitioner of these things, there's particular words that you might hear like pranayama breath, but I would just call it breathing, a breathing practice in the morning. And that's a counted practice. When you start with 3 minutes. You might inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold for 4. So that's the square breathing. That's quite, an obvious one, and it's quite common out there for people to know. There's a breath practice that I would do to calm the emotional breath, and that would be to inhale for a count of 4 and hold for 8, and then exhale for 8. Or you might inhale for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 8. And you would again start with 3 minutes and build it up to however long you have really in your day. Ideally around 20 minutes is a good time. If you're sitting on the floor, the body can start to get pins and needles around that time, but simply start with something. So start with conscious breath. And then those micro pauses in the day where you just think, oh gosh, it's one of those days, I've got so much going on, I've got my thoughts are going all over the place. Just take 2 minutes in between meetings, stand up, stretch your arms above your head, stretch to the sides, interlace your hands behind the back. Off, you can hear my shoulders clicking, so that really helps to elongate the spine. And then also, and something maybe that's not so relevant during the day is journaling. So they call it like name it to tame it. That's actually something that I've seen online recently. I'm not sure if I really like that slogan, but it kind of, it's like, okay, well,
it's memorable.
Why do I feel like this? Yeah. And maybe I don't know why I feel like this. So I'm going to write it down. So, and then actually you can look at the end of the week. Oh, actually what happened when I felt like that? And you can go back and have a look. So that journaling and acknowledging how you're feeling can also show you where your nervous system is having those moments when you're feeling under pressure. But they're tiny shifts, they're not intensive, big time out of your day. Although you might want to go for a walk, a simple thing, go out, get some fresh air. You might want to go, you guys have been in Brighton, so you're lucky you've got the beach nearby. Certainly anything out in nature is a wonderful way to be, especially with the sun out too.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm intrigued to hear a bit more about your own schedule and routine then, Angie. So how do you cope?
Oh, well, it has changed a lot over time. So it started with not having a coping mechanism and, and having some of those symptoms, and then learning, oh my God, there must be a better way. So my journey started with sort of a serious yoga practice, and I learned to meditate. And that takes some time to do. So I've committed a lot of my life to doing this. As I said, it was 20 years ago now that I had irritable bowel syndrome. Again, I was at a busy law firm, very tight deadlines, lots of travel going on. And I found a practice called reflexology helped me. So reflexology is a treatment through the feet and the hands that helped to calm my body and my nervous system, and all the symptoms went away. And I got really intrigued and I decided to learn this myself. So I've been on the board of the British Reflexology now for 20 years. And so that's something that I'll have regularly. So my practice is that I will also go to see somebody to help me. So I'll have those regular check-ins to keep me balanced. And it's an Eastern method. It's about proactive health. So everything that I do is along the lines of, okay, well, let's not get to the point of failure. Let's actually do something proactive before we get there. So less firefighting and more proactive ways of being. So other than going to see a practitioner and having a treatment of some sort, of course, that might not be reflexology for someone else. It might be acupuncture. It might be going and learning a martial art, for example, or learning to meditate. I'll get up, I'll sit down for, even if it's just 10 minutes, if I've got to catch a train, I'll sit down and I'll breathe. If I don't have time in the mornings to do that, say I'm walking to the station, I'll be more mindful of what I'm doing. So, awareness of what you're holding, your steering wheel, or you're walking along, you're aware of your feet. Those are called mindfulness practices. And then I'll write down what I'm doing in the day so that I know what's coming up during the day. I would then generally do something at lunchtime, either go out and get some fresh air. If I'm in the office, if I'm at home, I might do some other breath work. It's called Kriya. So this is where we move around and make sounds. And over the course of time, I've demonstrated this at some of the ecosystem partners that I've been at. The Essential crew will vouch for this for me. I've had them doing all sorts of things and making all sorts of wonderful, crazy sounds. In an open plan office, that was quite interesting. So if you're going to plan these events, maybe if it's a busy office, you plan a place where you can actually be quiet somewhere else or not disturb anyone. And so the wellness programs have actually sort of grown out of my own practice. So breath in the morning, some movement, outdoor time, sunlight. The circadian rhythms are really important. That sunlight, making sure we don't have too much blue light from the screen, getting to bed at an early time, drinking lots of water. As I said, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. What does that mean? That's the sister science of yoga. And I've gone in to study the nutritional aspect of how we're made up. It goes hand in hand with yoga, and it looks at us as a whole. So our environment, how we physically shape up, the shape of us, what type of pulse we have, how our memory works. And it's more than just what you see on the surface. So it's looking at somebody at a deeper level. So because I have this knowledge, how does that show up in my day? Well, often it doesn't, because at Workday, I'm not there to be a practitioner, but I'll know that when I'm home in the evening, or I get up in the morning, that's when I'll do those things, those daily habits. They're called dinacharya. And at the moment, I'm doing some HIIT training. So it's not just, it's not just about the relaxed things. Training in the morning is really good. So it gets you up and going. Around 7:30 a.m., the cortisol levels in the body are at their highest, which means often we'll wake up, and if we've got a lot going on, that's when we'll feel particularly stressed. It's because our bodies are actually forcing us to get up because it's a healthy thing to do, to get up. So not enough stress makes us not want to get up, and too much stress makes us not want to get up, because it's the moment the thoughts switch in. I don't know if you've ever not set your alarm and woken up, and actually you're really relaxed in the morning until those thoughts are clicking. Oh, what have I got to do today? There's so much going on in my life today. And then all of those ping pong thoughts, negative, positive, kick in. So that is why the morning practices are a good thing, because you get the circulation moving, you get out of your head and into your body. And that really is the key, is to distract your thoughts with something.
Absolutely. I concur wholeheartedly.
How about you, Joel? What's your morning routine?
Well. So I think I learned quite a lot of stuff from you, actually, and I'll talk a bit about that. I'm much more conscious of my breathing. So the backstory to this is around COVID, I effectively tore up and rebuilt my whole routine, and it starts in the morning. So, but it actually starts with going to bed early, but then it starts with the ability to get up between 5 and half 5 every day, regardless of whether it's a weekend or weekday, and depending on what I'm doing. So depending on where I'm going, if I'm traveling or if I'm in the office, I'll either do a HIIT workout or go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my favorite part of the day. After a HIIT workout, I go outside and I do stretching, and I spend about 10 minutes just in the fresh air. It cools me down, it calms me down. I listen to the birds, and that's when I focus on my breathing, and I use that period to just reflect. So I try and be grateful just for the day. And what I've found is it enables me to not carry more stress, but it keeps me calmer for longer, effectively. So you know what it's like. Things are coming at you all day, different things. You're having to be nimble. You're having to react to different situations. Lots of different emotions are hitting you. And working out in the morning and then focusing on my breath and having that nice calming start to the day enables me to sort of push through the day without getting what I call triggered. My coping mechanism, if I do get triggered or if it's just a bit overwhelming during the day, is actually to go for a walk, like what you said. I think typically a 10-minute power walk will allow me to reset. When I go to the gym, I will sit in the sauna and breathe. So this is some of the stuff that you've taught me. So I'll sit there and I'll really focus on my breath. and extending my breath and holding my breath for extended periods of time, and really, and that 20 minutes in the sauna goes really, really quickly. And when I come out, I find myself just so chilled, so calm. It's really quite therapeutic. So that's kind of my routine. I do it every day, and then I just make sure I drink lots of water, drink lots of coffee as well, but I find that calming, and go to bed as early as possible. I've found that I'm more open-minded. I cope with change much better. I'm much more, what's the word? I'm much more, not happier, but I'm much more mindful of all the good things. So I think before I had this routine, I used to obsess about the not so good. I was pretty chilled and pretty happy-go-lucky, but if certain things were happening, I'd obsess about them. And this process allows me to obsess about the good stuff. So I focus really hard on my mindset about, looking at all the positive, even if something's maybe not so positive or a bit more challenging. I'll task myself with thinking of all the potential positive things that could bring, whether it's learning, whether it's growth, whether it's the ability to resolve problems, whatever it is. So yeah, this is something I've really leaned into, actually, which is why this topic is so close to my heart. If you take a step back, we deal with a lot of stuff, kids, work, all sorts of things going on externally, news, or not always good news. So I just think that this routine for me personally enables me to kind of present my best self every day.
Yeah, brilliant, Joel. Yeah, we've just had a talk about something called the clarity compass, where you can directionally lead your thoughts. But it's being aware of, are your thoughts about something that's happened, something that's about to happen, or making one decision, making another decision. So there's a lot more to it than obviously this example, but where we decide to take the thoughts once they've started, is part of the game, really, in helping us to keep positive. And the brain will naturally, if something isn't going well and you're also, feeling stressed, and those moments of fatigue and burnout, the thoughts start to spiral downwards. And so the reason to do all of this, the reason that any of this is important and it's simple to do, is that so that downward doesn't happen and it becomes an upward movement. And so it's a physical upward movement or a breath upward movement. We start to shift the mindset in another direction, and that's a positive direction. And that really is a simple thing to say, but it often isn't an easy thing to do.
No, it's really hard work. You have to dedicate yourself to it and practice it and practice it and practice it. I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years and I'm still trying to evolve it. I'm still looking at different ways, diet, sleep, all sorts of different things. It can be quite addictive, actually, in a good way.
Yeah.
So let's summarize. I know we've got lost in our own routines, but let's have some final thoughts. So let's do a recap. So what are the signs of stress or burnout?
So the signs of stress and burnout are those brain fog. It can be aches and pains in the body, headaches, when digestive issues for sure are a sure sign. There's more nerve endings in the gut than there are in the brain. So they call it the second brain. So anything to do with dietary issues is a sure sign. And also not being able to focus. So if that focus just doesn't stay focused for, obviously you're the company of focus, right? So if that focus isn't directional and maintained, and you're finding that after, 30 seconds, what was I doing? But it's happening a lot, that's a sign of, I'm doing too much. I need to break, I need to have a break, or maybe not say break because we don't want to break our body. We say, I need to rest, and to rest and to be, and just to be present. How many windows do we all have at any one time open on our laptops? Close down those windows and be present in the moment. Go out for a walk, go find an empty space, and in the office somewhere quiet. A lot of companies now have wellness rooms, so take a moment out. You are allowed to do that. We are human beings, and we are, in being exceptional at what we do and high performers, that does mean having a moment of pause. And that doesn't mean that there's a lack of productivity. It means that we're rejuvenating, ready to be that high performer again, and to be innovative and creative. So it's absolutely essential. And I think that into the future, I'd like to see more of this in place, genuinely put in place, and not necessarily put into games or gamified in any way, to actually genuinely be a simple human practice.
No, I concur wholeheartedly. I think creating space, creating time to just take a step back and just either breathe or go for a walk or have a glass of water is also a really good one.
Yeah.
Just very simple stuff, but it just resets and it just allows you to, take a moment, take a beat, as I call it. Sometimes you need to take a beat, and then you can go back to what you're doing and go back to something new with kind of renewed vigor. So, yeah, look, this is a topic we could talk for hours about. I know we're both really, really passionate about it. It's been an absolute pleasure to do the highlights again, and obviously things have moved on. I know you've gone more into it, and obviously I have, given what I've just explained about my routine. So thank you again, Angie, for coming on and sharing your wisdom on wellness.
You're very welcome, Joel. Thank you so much for having me. And, like I said, these conversations matter so much, because wellness isn't separate from performance. It's that foundation that we need to bounce off of. And thank you for having me back.